Hey folks, welcome to the matchday review of the Leeds United versus Southampton game. Final day of the season, Leeds go down 2-1 to Southampton. And I want to break the game down, go through it in a few bits and pieces. From a top line perspective, the first thing is from how the game went. I had a decent seat yesterday, I had a good view. I spent a lot of time watching certain players because I wanted to kind of just see the whole round. The game, you don't see it on TV. So it was great to actually be able to spend time watching players. I watched Joe Pirot for quite a lot of the game and I actually thought he was okay yesterday. I wasn't happy seeing him in the team. I wanted Matteo Joseph to start. And when Pirot played, there was very little wrong that he did. He was involved in the game more than he has been recently. He was dropping off. Lovely finish when he got his chance. Outside of that chance, he didn't really get many other opportunities. So from that perspective, it was nice to watch players and watch the game, and there was a couple of things I noticed and I want to get into them. But from a top line perspective, I thought we started really well. I thought the first 15 minutes Leeds had plenty of the ball. The tempo was there. I've been talking about tempo all year. When Leeds moved the ball quickly, they're a really good side. When Leeds moved the ball slowly, we find it very hard to break teams down, and we look a very average team at times when it's slow. But when we move the ball quick, we can look really, really good. In the first 15 minutes, I was actually pretty happy about what I saw. I thought we're getting chances, we're putting the ball in wide areas, we're moving the ball quickly across the lines, we're coming out the back fast, we're pressing on. All very good. And then we conceded. The goals are a problem. But they're a problem because of the system that was put into place yesterday, those two goals specifically. We'll talk about the system in a bit, and I'll get into that in more detail. But 3 men at the back post, 3 men at the front post, players not marking, players running through the middle of the park, unmarked. There's a reason for that because of the system that was played and because certain people didn't do their jobs yesterday properly. Quite a lot didn't do their jobs yesterday properly. The second half was just flat. Absolutely flat as hell. And if you look at the second goal actually that we conceded, players gave up and assumed the ball was going out of play and just stopped and had started walking back the other direction when it was kept in play, or maybe kept in play, and then squared across for the tap in from Will Smallbone, who has scored 2 of the easiest goals he'll ever score in his career against Leeds this year. 2 very similar goals as well. And for a player who, as we were talking about in the East Stand, that a very average midfielder on most cases, plays for Ireland and is a very average midfielder for Ireland. But Leeds made him look like Maradona yesterday because of the space they gave him. The piece I want to talk about and where the goals came from and where the free runners through the middle of the park are coming. Daniel Farke made a comment yesterday about trying something different and went into a man marking system. It's the wrong time of year to try different things. It's the wrong time of the year. It's the right time of the year to go back to basics and what was doing well, working well for you. Go with that. The man marking system caused a problem for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons was Joe Rodon and Ethan Ampadu were man marking the front two and man marking them very well. But when the front two split and ran wide, Ampadu and Rodon went with them, which creates a huge hole in the middle of the park. And what was happening was Ilya Groove was having to fill in and cover because Glenn Kamara wasn't tracking back. Chris Somerville wasn't tracking back. Willie Gnonto wasn't tracking back. Georgina Rutter was trying. But those 3 weren't tracking back, so there was players coming in from angles and different areas into those middle areas. And there was nobody else in there. Ilya Groove, from me, I thought, had a really good game considering all he was trying to do was fill in anywhere there was a gap, try and break up the play. Great tackle on the edge of the box at one stage to stop what would look like a certain goal for Southampton. But the man marking system caused a problem because not everybody was man marking properly. And that's the problem. We had it with Bielsa as well. Man marking works perfectly, assuming everybody man marks and can stick to their job and can stay switched on and track their players around the park. But as soon as 1 or 2 players switch off, the man marking system falls apart. The first goal is scored for me because Joe Rodon gets dragged out of position because he's marking the striker, who drops all the way into the opposition half, and he went with him. We saw this last year with Liam Cooper and the year before with Liam Cooper, when he would be man marking and get dragged up the park, which creates a huge hole and there's nobody else to fill in there because everyone's man marking. So it's not like Groove can drop in there and fill that gap. He can't. It's not like when the fullbacks can step in and fill the gap, because he can't, because he's man marking as well. And what happened was, again, the midfield weren't marking correctly, or the wide players weren't marking correctly, and there was a couple of passes interchanged and the ball was played into that space. And then Leeds are out of shape. Roland's throwing back, Leeds are trying to get dragged across to one side, and they get so far dragged across to one side, they lead 3 players on the other side, and the ball comes back out, it's worked back in, and it's a tap in on the far side. So that's the problem for me, and that's where the goals come from me. It's the fact that the man marking system that they decided to put into place in the last game and this game didn't work. It just creates space because not everyone's doing it. Now, that's not a criticism necessarily of the players, but it's the wrong time of year to implement a brand new strategy. And man marking as a defensive strategy is a different strategy to normal holding your shape and covering players, or, you know, if there's a player in your zone, pick him up. It's a very different thing. And everyone has to be switched onto it, and everyone has to do it, and they don't. Also came out that Glenn Kamara apparently has been suffering from COVID, which has caused him problems, which explains probably the lack of energy that he's had in the recent weeks that he's had. But for me, yesterday, I have issues with Glenn Kamara yesterday. We'll get to them. We get to the performances. So we'll break this down. This is the top line part. We'll do the system and the setup pieces, and we'll also do performances. Also moving on, that the changes people have been asking all season, I have been asking all season. One of my biggest criticisms of Daniel Farke, and I say criticisms because I don't want the manager sacked. 90 points is still a good total. He's still done a good job considering the absolute shit show the start of the season was. But it is disappointing, and I get that people are frustrated with certain things, the style of play and all that. I get all that. I completely understand all that. From a changes perspective, he made 3 changes in the 68th minute. Jayden Anthony came on, Archie Gray came on, and Mateo Joseph went on. Jayden Anthony I've got an issue with yesterday because people are criticising Sam Byron for passing the ball backwards and sideways. In the first half of Nanto he did it a bit, but in the second half Jayden Anthony came on and marked the fullback. So every time Byron got the ball and he looked up to pass the ball to Anthony, he was completely marked. He never really, apart from 2 occasions, tried to make a run in behind. The only 2 that he did try to make a run in behind, he was offside. That's a problem, not coming in. And then when he did drop short, he would bring players with him and congest the space. So it wasn't good enough for me yesterday when he came on. Didn't make the impact he should be making, and didn't look busy enough for me. Mateo Joseph ran around an awful lot, but again, we weren't creating a whole lot of chances. And we'll get to all that kind of stuff in a minute. The other thing on performance as well, some old performances starting to creep back into the side. The likes of Chris Somerville not tracking back runners. We saw that last year. One of the biggest criticisms I had last year of Chris Somerville was he's happy to do the attacking job, but he's not so keen to do the defensive job, and he didn't do it yesterday. He wasn't tracking back fullbacks, and we were getting situations where Junior Firpo was getting doubled up on yesterday, which shouldn't happen. Same on the other side of the work. Willie Gnonto had a game where he wanted to complain and moan and wave his hands, got booked for moaning, and wasn't tracking players back either. So you had these fullbacks that were running back, and every time we looked at it, you saw Somerville and Gnonto walking back to the halfway line with their players they're supposed to be covering were gone. And again, bearing in mind they're just supposed to be playing a man marking system, which means every other player is man marked except the 2 players, which means you've got 2 free runners with nobody able to tackle them because they're man marked. So that becomes a bigger problem when players don't do the job there as well. Moving on from that, just to top the season, I listened to the Square Ball this morning. I highly recommend listening to the match ball from the Square Ball today if you can, and just listen to the first 15 minutes of it. Not listen to the whole lot of it, you should, but the first 15 minutes specifically. And Moscow goes through the reasons why he thinks Leeds have ran out of steam, and he made some excellent points. These are not excuses, by the way, because someone will say no more excuses. They're not excuses. Leeds had 90 points this season. They're not excuses, right? But they're valid reasons. They're part of the reason. They're not all. Like, we ran out of steam. That's a huge part of it. And the reason for that, and Moscow made a very good point, when you look at the team, 3 players in that squad have played more than 32 games in a season in their history. The rest of them haven't played more than 32 games, and playing 46-game season, they've run out of steam. They just ran out of steam. The injuries come back after the international break and the momentum being stopped when you're winning, and then all of a sudden your players break up and they go away, and you come back to try and get back into that momentum again is very tricky. They didn't do it, and that's been a problem. The injuries haven't helped. Ilya Groove getting the injury when he didn't help, because he was really settling into a nice partnership in the midfield there as well. The Welsh players getting knocked out, Moscow talks about them as well and the damage that did. Connor Roberts getting injured because he adds more dynamism to Leeds going forward, which I agree with. All of those are very, very valid reasons. And then the age profile of the team as well, having that lack of experience and that lack of, I suppose, maturity and intelligence. The Leeds captain yesterday, Ethan Ampadu, 24 years of age. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, he's got experience, but as Moscow points out yesterday, his experience has been being relegated by clubs in the last couple of seasons, and here he is captaining his side trying to get promoted. It's a very different thing. So there's lots of valid reasons why Leeds have dropped off. It's not great that it's happened. Manager has to cop some responsibility for that. And for not being able to change the team, because putting the same team out that played against QPR and were as flat as they were against QPR, you know, you give the team a chance to make things better. Farke has done that this season, where when early on in the season he tried rotating it didn't work, and he seemed to pull those players out of the team pretty much indefinitely for a while. Anthony came out of the team, Groove came out of the team for a long time. Willie Gnonto the same, was out of the team for a long period of time, especially after the Stoke game. Outside of that, they've managed to get back in, but in general, he seems to just want to play the same team. He trusts the same team. The issue with this is, on several moments this year, he hasn't changed the team at half-time, or made changes at half-time when they were needed. Not saying they were needed yesterday, but in general. And he says that's usually down to giving the players the opportunity to fix things. And I've been a performance the manager will say for the next game, look, same team's going out, you've got an opportunity to fix this, you're good players, you've proven this season that you're good players, maybe it's just a blip, you've got a chance to fix this. Problem was, hasn't worked this year when he's done that. In general, they haven't been able to fix things. And coming back after the QPR game and going pretty much the same team again and expecting a more up-tempo performance wasn't going to happen, and didn't happen. The second half of the game was incredibly flat. Leeds run out of ideas when they get to the edge of the box. I know the shoot chant was going around the ground for a while yesterday. I think more out of banter than anything else at that point of the season. Last game of the year, it didn't mean anything at that stage. It was just 2-0 up. that had gotten around the ground. It was pretty obvious that the players knew about it. Didn't really matter anymore, but you want players to take responsibility, and this is where for me the manager doesn't cop any blame, because the manager picks a team, he sets out the tactics and sends the players out, but at some point the players have got to take responsibility to shoot the ball, to try and take chances, to get into attacking areas and move the ball quicker. Glenn Kamara, and one of the biggest problems yesterday with Glenn Kamara for me was every time Glenn Kamara got the ball, he put his foot on the ball and stopped the game dead. Now, there was no reason for it. He could have passed the ball right back where it came from. He could have opened his body up and gone across the park, keep the ball moving, which keeps the defence in front of you and the team in front of you unbalanced and having to keep moving. Every time he put his foot on the ball and stopped it dead, he wasn't pressed. It gives Southampton a chance to get all their players back in behind the ball, settle into their positions, pick up who they need to pick up, and get ready for the attack. It was driving me nuts watching it yesterday. I'm going, stopping the game. The point of trying to beat a low block or a team that are sitting back, you've got to move the ball quickly. You've got to move it quickly around the lines, and he wasn't doing that. So they need to take responsibility. That's Glenn Kamara's decision, nobody else's, because nobody else was doing it. So clearly it's a personal decision. Players around the edge of the box shooting the ball, personal decision. Be brave, get into an area, shoot. When we got into wide areas, instead of cutting it back inside, every now and then, just smash it across the box. We were doing it for a while this year during that run. You're getting OGs, you're getting balls pinging in off people, you're getting people getting their toe on it. You bring Mateo Joseph on, who thrives in that 6-yard area, and there's no balls going into the box. There's nothing going in around the outside. It gets to the edge, we have a little look up, think there's too many players, don't want to take the risk of losing the ball, so go back inside and go back again and go all the way back to Joe Rodon and all the way back around the far side and try it again on the far side. And the same thing. There's nobody in the team, and this again comes down to the age profile and lack of experience and maturity. There's nobody in that side to grab it by the scruff of the neck going, give me the ball and hit it. Just wasn't happening, and that's where I think the frustration, the shoot chant came from yesterday, people wanting that to happen. It just wasn't happening, and the players have got to take some of the responsibility for those decisions. A manager can do so much. I heard someone else ask me during the week about Farke's attitude on the sideline. He's very passive, he doesn't do an awful lot. And the way I've always said it is, from playing for some very, very good managers and being a manager for a while, your job is done by Saturday morning. Like, your job is done. You've done your work on the training ground. You've gone through the tactics. You've gone through the opposition, how they're going to play. You've done your walkthroughs on the pitch. You've set up how you will set up against them. You have put your second side out on the training pitch to set up as Southampton will set up, so you can practice playing against those teams. Your job is done once you've got there. The second they cross the line, the players have responsibility to play the game the way it should be played, to take chances, to move the ball quickly, to get in behind, to put crosses in the box, to put pressure on people, to press at the right times, to press as a group and not individually. The press with Leeds yesterday was, some players, Rudder was actually pressing quite well. Somerville in the first half was pressing quite well, and Joe Pirro just wasn't pressing as quick as them. Then a couple of minutes later, Joe Pirro presses quick, and Somerville presses quick, and then Rutter's a couple of yards behind, and then a few minutes later, Rutter presses quick, and Pirro presses quick, and Somerville's a couple of yards behind. And it's just that disjointedness doesn't work, and it creates gaps for teams to play through. That's a player decision. The players have got to be able to know when the triggers are and when to move, and it was disjointed. The more you go through the team yesterday, there was more and more decisions. Like Sam Byram deciding to go back as often as he did. Why is that? Well, I think we covered it in the Coventry game a couple of weeks ago and did the analysis. Everyone just runs forward and just gets marked. And you're like, well, there's no clear option. And that's where the bravery comes into it. Sam Byram wants to retain possession. Connor Roberts comes on and he wants to run in behind. He wants to get at them. Very different approach, very different players, but they're personal decisions made by players. They're individual players' decisions. Otherwise, when Connor Roberts, if it was a tactical thing and a manager thing, when Connor Roberts come in, he would do the exact same thing that Sam Byram was doing. He doesn't. He's a different player, does things differently. Same with Archie Gray when he plays there. And same at the middle of the park when Archie went in there. All of a sudden, the ball starts moving a little bit quicker in there. You know, we're taking touches forward, we're moving into attacking spaces, and then we're passing the ball, not stopping the ball dead. So there's lots of different factors that are there, but the players have got to take some responsibility of this as well. The manager does cop responsibility for a lot of things, putting the team out there in the first place, but he made his changes early, which everybody wanted. I thought Pirro was fine yesterday. I wouldn't say I have any problem with him, and he definitely wasn't the reason Leeds lost the game. And in fact, the only chance he got in the match, he scored. It was a lovely finish. So you take it from that perspective. You go moving on then and moving into the actual team performance is part of it, breaking it down. Junior Firpo and Sam Byram defensively were okay, but again found themselves being doubled up on because the wingers weren't tracking back there to fullbacks. So Kyle Walker-Peters was finding himself in acres of space around the outside of Junior Firpo. Nothing he could do about it. Chris Somerville's on the halfway line complaining. Same with Willie Gnonto on the far side. Two players that yesterday annoyed me. We'd seen Somerville come back in some really good form in recent weeks, but that really bothered me. Byram, fine defensively. Threat from the set pieces a little bit. Maybe a little bit negative in how he played. Maybe went backwards more often than he should have. Maybe he should have been braver to go forward. But again, that's a player decision. Two centre-backs I thought were actually okay. I know there's criticism of the defence, but if you look at it again, the context of they were man-marking, did they man-mark their players well? Did they follow Armstrong around the park? Yeah, they did. They did all that really, really well. The problem was, nobody else was, and the players were running into the space that they were leaving behind. So, if you look at it from a position of, why is the defender on the halfway line? He's left a huge hole. That's the defender's fault. You can say that. But if you look at it in the context of, well, he's man-marking the striker, and that's the job he's been given to do. Striker's dropped into his own half. He goes with him. That's the job you're supposed to do. But if everybody else marks the other players, then nothing happens. But they weren't, and that's where the mistakes came from. If you're in the middle of the park, Ilya Groove, I thought found himself in a position where he was trying to clean up everybody else's mistakes, and I thought he did a really good job of that. He had more passes attempted in the first half than I think most of the players in the team, which was really good to see as well. I thought Ilya Groove was starting to look back to his normal self again, but for me, the problem in the middle of the park yesterday was Glenn Kamara not moving the ball quick enough, not covering players' runs, not being active enough, and that could be down to the fact that he's been really ill over the last couple of weeks. And it's probably a factor in that as well. But again, you're going back to that. It's a long season. He's played a lot of games. He didn't have a pre-season. This is always a concern with Glenn Kamara coming towards the back end of the season, that the fact that he hasn't played a lot of minutes would lead to the fact that he might run out of some steam. And he did. When you go into the wider areas, Nanto and Somerville, when they got the ball, they looked a little bit dangerous. Willie at times didn't look as keen as he normally does to get inside and try and have shots. He wanted to go down the line an awful lot more. He was finding it tough and was getting really frustrated really early on. Gets involved in a player in the first half, gets a yellow card for just essentially complaining at the referee consistently when the referee was trying to tell the two of them to stop. Referee was awful yesterday. Again, by the way, Leeds should have had a penalty with Jorginho Rutter, but besides the point. Somerville defensively didn't do his job. Nanto defensively didn't do his job going forward. When they got the ball, Cree tried to do some things, tried to link up. There's times where I think if it's not working for Cree on the left, if he can't cut inside and shoot, I'd like him to go onto the right hand side and just smash balls across the box, get balls in there and actually do some crosses, because he will always do the same thing. Cree Somerville will always check back inside and will always look to shoot. And if he can't shoot, we'll end up squaring the ball back to the midfielder and then recycle the ball again. But it's predictable. And a lot of Leeds play yesterday was predictable. From top to bottom, it was predictable. It was too slow and too predictable. And you go front then, Jorginho Rutter, I thought was trying yesterday. He covered a lot of ground. He was trying to get on the ball an awful lot. He held onto the ball better than he has done in recent weeks. And again, maybe a little nugget of coming back into a little bit of form, or at least starting to feel more comfortable in himself, which is good, but not a massive impact on the game from an attacking perspective. Didn't get any shots away, didn't create a whole lot of chances either. So from that perspective, probably not a great game. So probably a mishmash. If you're giving them ratings, like a 5 or a 6 out of 10 probably on that. And then Joe Pirro, for me, I get the people saying that he shouldn't be in the team. He hasn't been doing well. Leeds don't do well when he's in the team. All that's fine. I was the same before the game when I saw Joe Pirro. I was like, I wanted to see Joseph. I think he's the direct replacement for Bamford, and I want to see Joseph in the team. We didn't get that. We got Pirro. But if you look at it from just that game's perspective, and again, taking the history and the emotion out of it completely, for me, Joe Pirro was fine. He wasn't responsible for anything bad that we did. He didn't really lose the ball so much. First half, a couple of heavy touches. He gets one chance. He scores that chance. Did we create any chances for him after that? Not really. Not really. And that has been a problem. You know, that's been a problem, especially in recent weeks. We're not creating chances. We're not breaking quick enough. We're not moving the ball into space when players are in space. And again, Kamara was doing this, but also fullbacks as well. When they've got the ball and they're breaking out, if you've got a fullback ahead of you in 5, 6, 7 yards of space, give him the ball when he's in space. But we don't. We run into that space with the ball. We close it down. We wait till the defenders are passing, and then we do a 2-yard pass to him. And then we can't do anything with it because he's completely surrounded by players. So there's that kind of stuff. It's frustrating. It's a game that really meant nothing. I know we all had a little bit of tiny little shred of hope, and I believe in miracles and all that. I had a bit of fun before the game yesterday where I said I believe in miracles, and then after the game, miracles are overrated. So you always have a little bit of hope. The job was done by Ipswich going into that game, but you wanted Leeds to come out of it with some positivity. You wanted to come out of it with a bit of momentum. You wanted to come out of it lifting the shadow of the last couple of weeks off their shoulders going into the playoffs. That hasn't happened. That hasn't happened yesterday. And there's not a huge amount to be excited about. I've said to some people yesterday in the airport, chatting to some people, I would worry about the playoffs with the form Leeds are in, and with the fact that Farke doesn't seem to want to change the team up. Now, the problem with this as well is, if he changes it outside of Mateo Joseph, what does he change it to? Because he's tried Archie Gray in midfield. That hasn't worked. Connor Roberts looks like he could be back for the playoffs, which is huge. He said Dan James might be back for the playoffs. That might be huge. Whether you like Pat Bamford or not, Leeds clearly play better from an attacking perspective when Pat Bamford is in that team. Leeds' entire positive run this season was done when Bamford was in the side, and Leeds beat Middlesbrough Bamford in the side, and we've lost when he's not in the side. Now, I'm with a lot of people on Pat Bamford. He is Marmite, he's streaky, he has great games and he has poor games. And he goes on runs of these. He can score for 4 or 5 games in a row and then won't score for 5 or 6 in a row, and it frustrates the life out of people. I completely get that. But again, if you look at it from an entire team perspective, when he is in that side, Leeds have been better than when he hasn't been in that side. And unfortunately, that's the issue. Regardless of what happens at the end of this season, whether Leeds go up or Leeds don't go up, there is an overhaul that will be needed in the squad. Again, going back to the finance and stuff, the people that are peddling Leeds are in financial trouble, Paul Robinson, Carlton Palmer saying Leeds will have the points deductions. They won't. Go and watch the Kieran Maguire interview that we did with him. He's very clear. Leeds won't have a problem unless they're still in the Championship at the start of the 26th season. It's 2 years. It's 2 years. Let's hope we don't have to get that far. Let's hope we get out of the division this year. Next year, if we don't get out of this year, we'll go again next year. You'll probably lose Nanto and Somerville. You'll probably get a combined 50 to 70 million for the two of them, because the 49ers aren't skint, don't need to sell, can clear off some debt themselves if they need to. Will Farrell's just bought into the club as well. There's more money coming in there. So if it's a case that they need to sell those two players, they bring in 70 million, we're okay. We're okay. You could probably do an awful lot with that if you're still in the Championship. Buy a Smodix or a Whittaker or whoever, all these players that are doing well and teams that are down the bottom half of the table. You could pinch them for relatively cheap amounts of money on a short-term deal to get you back to the Premier League. There's lots you can do. There's lots and lots you can do. But let's hope it doesn't get to that point. But there will be overhauls, because you won't have Connor Roberts if we're in the Championship next season. You might not have Joe Rodon, although I reckon we will. Ethan Ampadu will need to go into midfield. Has to happen next season, back to where he was doing well for Leeds. Liam Cooper's gone. Pascal Stroke will be back, but Charlie Creswell probably won't be there, playing back up again. Left back, the decisions are made about Junior Firpo. 2 years left on his contract now. This will be the season where Leeds either offer him a new deal or sell him. Remains to see what happens there, whether he wants to stick around for what has been a very positive season for him. Middle of the park will still be there, but you need to add a goal scoring midfielder to that. You'll probably lose Nanto and Somerville. They're the two that will probably go. You'll have Dan James. You won't have Jaden Anthony, so another winger is needed, at least one more winger. And then you probably need another 10 and a number 9 that can score goals. Regardless if Matteo Joseph is the number 1 next year up front, you'll still need a second striker who can score more goals off the bench. That's needed. So there's a lot of change that will need to happen whether we go up or whether we don't go up. But we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But let's hope we get up in the meantime. Again, as I said at the start of this, I'm not angry. I'm not outraged. I'm not going to use sensationalist terms like shocking and disgraceful and all that. I don't do that. It's just not my style. It's there if you want it. Plenty out there if you want it. And, each to their own. Choice is great for everybody. There's something for everyone. So you can enjoy that wherever you want to enjoy it. I have been critical within this. Maybe the tone's not that critical, but I have been critical of certain areas. Manager has to cop some blame for putting the team out in the first place, and the man marking system for me just didn't work at all. At the wrong time of the year to be bringing in something like that, it really is for me a poor move. From a player's perspective, they have a huge amount of stuff they have to get better at. They've got to start being more responsible. They've got to stop moaning and whinging at each other. They've got to start being more positive. They've got to start trying to create things and take more risks when they're in the areas where risks should be taken. You don't take risks in your own half. You don't take risks in the middle of the park. But you get to the final third, that's the area to be creative and take risks and gamble. And Leeds don't do that at the moment, and they need to start doing it more. And if they want to get in behind the low block, you've got to move the ball quicker. Saying it all year, and I know people are browned off listening to me say it, but that's the reality. Look at the run we went on, and in that run, Leeds moved the ball rapidly. We were being called a counter-attacking side at one point. We don't look like that now because the ball is being moved way too slow. That has to be fixed, and for me, that is the number one problem that Leeds have right now, is the tempo is way too slow. It was too slow at the start of the season, and it's too slow at the end of the season. And whether that is the players just running out of steam because of the age bracket, because how many of them haven't played the 46-game season before, it's been a new thing for them, or just tired, and it's got to them, and they've felt the pressure. And maybe that's possible. They're a very young side. The average age of 23, I think, is the average age of the squad. You look at Ipswich, the average age is close to the 30s. It's not an excuse, but it is a factor. And that should be said. That's going to be for me today, folks. Massive thanks, as always, for supporting and watching the channel. I'll be back on Monday morning for more Leeds news. I will talk to you then. Have a cracking rest of your weekend. See you then.